What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about SoFi, I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what really moved it and what institutions have been doing. Before we get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi went down 3.15%, largely just piggybacking off the broader market. 14.23 the low, 14.94 the high, 71 million shares being traded though. So definitely good to see. A lot of that, especially in the second half of the trading day, was linked to algorithmic trading, because that is where things started to get very dicey. You did have Trump pretty much outright insinuating that the States is in striking distance, that they own the air above Iran. So things are going to get very interesting. After hours, you did see this as well. So Iran is preparing to strike US assets if America enters the war. So things are going to get very real very fast. On a macro data point standpoint though, we did have retail sales come out first thing, a little bit worse for wear, so negative 0.9 versus a forecast of negative 0.4. So not the best, but of course that for face value could potentially justify future rate cuts down the line. But flip side, we also did have some pretty solid manufacturing production data, both month over month and year over year. So let me know your viewpoint on that in the comments below. Aside from geopolitical and what's happening in the Middle East, SoFi did put this out, and Anthony, it's been a while since he's actually engaged or did any posts associated to SoFi, and I know that's kind of SoFi's biggest flaw, that their management team isn't as engaging as others, aka Robinhood and stuff, but he did say, amazing team, congrats. So this was Galileo. So Galileo just earned top spot in Javelin's 2025 digital issuance provider scorecard. So good stuff. I think we already do know behind the scenes, Galileo's kind of going to be that big money maker 2026 and onwards for SoFi, and it's just right now and over the last year and a half, it's been laying a very solid foundation for SoFi. So I think big things will be coming. So let me know your viewpoint on that in the comments below. Aside from that, no SEC filings, no press releases or anything like that. So it is, like I said, just at the mercy of the broader market. Looking at shorts, they did return 78,000 shares today. 12.96% of the free floats being shorted works out to be 140 million shares. This is exactly what shorts normally do on these crazy sell-offs. They just sit back and chill out. And can you blame them? Because the market is panicking, market is selling off. They don't need to double down. They don't need to try to artificially suppress it. The market's just doing the damage themselves. And a lot of that, again, is coming from algorithmic trading. So let me know your viewpoint on that. A couple key things to watch for, though, is going to be tomorrow and Friday. As I said, those days, that's where shorts might get a little bit more active. But one thing to take note of, though, it's been a solid week and a half that we have had the cost to borrow minimum positive up until today. So cost to borrow minimum is negative 0.22%. That is an annual rate, not a daily rate. So it's not that big of a deal, but that does show that there is brokers out there paying people to short SoFi. So kind of crazy as per usual. So it's been a while since we've seen that, but looking at the options, 14 million in calls, 3.4 in puts, 50% of all the options being done are bearish in nature. And most of that isn't anything crazy. It's just they are anticipating for it to get to roughly around that $12 range. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Based on the bulls, you do see a consensus for it to be above 15. So still a certain level of optimism as a kind of just the consensus, not just big money. You are seeing kind of the consensus believing that it will be sub 13 though. So you kind of have that back and forth. A lot of transactions did occur both on the secondary market as well as dark pools. So a lot of strings of selling right here. You had that string of buying, so even a big one, 2.3 million, that is what caused that nice spike up to the high, but ultimately it did bounce off of a key resistance level, which I will go over in 1 second. But dark pool, you did see some abnormal transactions being done after hours. Dark pool is rather difficult. You kind of have to coincide it with the chart just to see what did happen, because of course dark pool, you don't see any bid or the ask. So 1.5 million million, 8.6 million, and 1.6, all being done after hours. And based on the timing, it is fair to assume that they were sells, which does match around the time frame this did come out. So maybe institutions are just kind of expecting the worst for Iran to kind of strike the assets. So yeah, like I said, I think just maybe people are just mitigating the risk. I've seen a lot of articles coming out about just how do you protect your assets. So maybe these institutions are just kind of have that same mentality. But right now, with it closing at 1443, right between this R2 and this R1. So 1440 is going to be that key pivot. After hours is dipping a little bit below that, but nothing overly crazy for the volume. But 1440 going into tomorrow is going to be a key pivot. And then 1496 is going to be the next strong target / resistance for SoFi. And then 1350 will be the following support. So like I said, it kind of bounced generally off of both the R2 and the R1. So this is why just take a mental note of the support and resistance points. If you're looking at averaging down, just kind of orient it towards that 1350, 1261, or 1205. Again, like I mentioned, the big money is feeling that it will get to roughly around that $12 range, at least in the short term. So something to keep in mind. But aside from that, though, no new analyst ratings, no articles, no changes to any of the key metrics that typically analysts like to look at. So people are just holding their breath, waiting for either things to calm down or either the shit to hit the fan. My apologies on the French. But nonetheless, on the actual chart itself, give you a quick overview of that. It is essentially still good, still above all the key pivotal moving averages that I like to look at. So the 50, 100, and also 200-day moving averages. 100-day moving average is sitting at 1334, so that's going to be a key pivot. At the same time, you do have both the 50 and 200-day moving averages pretty much right beside each other. So the 50-day is at 1286, 200 is at 1277. And so if it does break that 100, most likely it'll just be wedge bound between these 2 points. Because of the recent consolidation, stochastic RSI is rather neutral, so it's not overbought anymore. So that's kind of a good thing. So it could really stand to benefit SoFi, maybe if there's a nice recovery or let's say a ceasefire or something coming from the Middle East, then you might see, like I said, a nice push higher. But what Powell also says tomorrow is going to shake the broader market. So tomorrow's going to be a fun day, and most likely you're going to hear higher for longer once again. So it's going to be another kind of interesting scenario, how and Powell's explanation on that. So yeah, it's a fun time. So as I've said time and time again, even when we were selling off in April, it is near impossible to catch the bottom. Best way to do and play SoFi is just dollar cost average, or just buy, close your eyes, believe in your long-term mentality, and then yeah, it's a fun time. But if you're always kind of watching the stock price, it does tend to get a little bit crazy. So let me know your viewpoint on SoFi. Did you buy? Are you waiting? Are you one of those individuals that is trying to mitigate some risk and maybe cycle out into more cash and cash equivalent type of kind of things? Like, what's your general thoughts on everything that's been happening? But one final thing, pop over to my Patreon and give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.